On Tomorrow's World, Danger Unexploded Bomb, the invention that can spot them deep underground.
Thus, the implant that can help people put the misery of depression behind them.
And the miniature spy plane that uses insect technology.
Hello, welcome to the future, and the new way to detect danger underground.
The Second World War is a long time ago now, but its legacy still puts lives at risk even today.
Hundreds of unexploded bombs still lie hidden below the ground. They're quite safe as long as they're undisturbed, but on building sites where they're often dug up quite unexpectedly, they are a real danger.
Lindsay Fallow investigates a new way of spotting bombs before the digging starts.
1998, Stepney in London, and building site workers make a lethal discovery.
I request you to vacate their properties as quick as possible, please.
2,000 local residents are evacuated after digger driver Des Lynch has a lucky escape.
Come across this suspicious-looking rusty object in the ground, and it turned out to be a bomb.
It was live, but Army bomb disposal experts quickly removed the danger. But the next bomb could turn up anywhere, like this wasteland on the River Medway at Rochester.
The site is earmarked for development, and when building work begins, lives could be at risk. That's because 50 years ago, this area was a prime target for German bombers, aiming at the gas holders behind me and the Royal Navy dockyards just next door. Until now, there's never been an easy way to find out whether there are any nasty surprises lurking beneath my feet.
But this huge truck is fitted with a brand new device that will safely reveal hidden bombs before building work starts. The device is used by Jerry Smith, an ex-Army bomb disposal officer. Most of us would find his job terrifying, but it's a daily challenge for Jerry.
Well, the most exciting bit is when you actually find a buried bomb and you have to deal with it, identify it. That's when the adrenaline kicks in.
On green fields, Jerry looks for bombs using an ordinary metal detector. But on derelict urban sites, there can be so much scrap metal in the soil that the detector is fooled. It can't tell if it's found something like this or one of these. So another, more drastic technique is needed. The other way is to use an auger like this to drill into the ground and then drop your metal detector down into the hole. But the trouble is, you've no idea what you're drilling into. Hit a bomb and the results could be fatal.
But this new device finally solves that problem. Built into the end of this probe is a powerful metal detector which gives an instant warning of any metal object beneath it.
It's forced straight into the ground by hydraulic rams without any drilling.
Which means it's not only safer, it's faster too. Today we're going to see just how well the new detector works. Somewhere on this piece of ground behind me, we've buried a real World War II bomb. And to make it more realistic, we've also contaminated the surface with plenty of scrap. So, can the new probe find the bomb despite the buried scrap? Lifting onto its 4 stabilising legs, the truck's in position at the first test point. Surveying 20 square metres at a time, the probe shouldn't take more than 16 goes to find the target. The control room's in the back of the truck, so I join Jerry as he begins the search. Assembled bit by bit, the probe's gradually forced straight into the ground. The square mat marks the test point. It can reach 17 metres down and gives an instant reading in the control room above. So Jerry, what are we measuring here?
What we're measuring is the Earth's magnetic field. The graph's showing us really the contamination from the metal that you put on the ground at the top here. As we go deeper, we can see then that the curve nicely smooths away and gives us a nice low reading to tell us that this hole's clear.
So if there was a bomb down there, what would happen to this graph?
If there was a bomb here, we would actually get a lump in this curve.
Okay, so we're all clear down to about 7 metres. What happens now?
What we do now is move on to the next position.
Test point 2's clear. And the third, still nothing. On to position 4. Well, there's definitely something happening to the curve there, isn't there? Do you think that's our bomb?
Well, it could be. There's a large metal object down there anyway.
So if it's not a bomb, then it's probably a fridge.
Well, it could be. That's the sort of size we're looking at.
With a possible target identified, it takes another 2 probes to pinpoint its exact location. But to find out if it's really our bomb, it's over to the digger. In a real case, it would be a painstaking excavation, but there's no messing about today. Jerry's detector is bang on target, and up comes a perfectly safe empty bomb casing. It's absolutely huge, isn't it? Is this what you're expecting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a casing of a German 500-kilogram bomb. You can see there's no explosive in it.
In this soft clay, each probe has taken about 20 minutes, so we found our bomb in under 2 hours, free from the danger of drilling.
The new device should make it 10 times quicker to clear a site before building starts, so it should make surprise discoveries a thing of the past.
Now, which words spring to mind when I say family day out? Picnic? Funfair? Beach?
Or maybe death, predator and vicious pig?
Well, if you take the family down to a new science centre which is about to open in South Yorkshire, those weird-sounding things are all part of the entertainment.
Science doesn't have to be dull, engineering doesn't have to be dull. You can integrate them in an artistic way and be very creative.
Professor Sharkey's idea of creative fun is to set up a colony of breeding robots. On one side is the vicious pig, a predator robot with a deadly snout. On the other side, it's prey.
Now what we've created here is a sort of artificial ecosystem in which the robots can evolve. They run around and they try to do the best they can to maintain their energy.
It's hoped that soon there'll be a swarm of 15 robots. These are the first 2 prototypes and are being trained to stalk each other, the predator attempting to steal its prey's energy just to survive.
On top of the prey are solar panels. The prey get their energy from light and the predators get their energy from grabbing the little prey and holding them up to their mouths and sending down a tongue and sucking their battery juice out.
To help track each other down, the robots come equipped with an infrared nose.
The predator can sniff another robot, and from that it can tell whether it's a fellow predator or a prey. Every so often we will take the fittest of those and they will breed.
The robots have an electronic brain called a neural network, which Professor Sharkey hopes will evolve and improve with each new generation.
They send their neural networks back to a main computer. It will reassemble them and squirt those back out through radio link to the little robots there. What we're really hoping to see is the emergence of collective behaviour. That means the robots cooperating together. They might cluster together as a defensive mechanism, or we might find the predators cooperating by one standing in the way of the others, and they will drive into the waiting arms of another one. All the scientific process will be transparent and be in the public eye continuously, so they can see the experimental work evolve over time.
Professor Sharkey hopes that the robot swarms will be up and running by the end of the summer, and the Magna Centre itself opens tomorrow.
If you want to put your robot questions to the Professor, he'll be answering questions in a web chat for an hour after the show. The website address is www.bbc.co.uk/TW. That's www.bbc.co.uk/TW.
Now, most medical breakthroughs take years to develop, but just occasionally they come about by lucky chance. And that's what happened with this. It's a nerve stimulator, and it sends out little electronic pulses through the body's nervous system.
Originally, it was designed to help treat epilepsy, but a doctor in the States noticed that although it didn't always stop a patient's seizures, it did seem to make them happier.
So could it also help people suffering from depression? Anya Sitaram is in Texas to meet one of the patients involved in the very first trial.
Most people would think that Joanne Tesoriero had everything to be happy about. She's surrounded by a warm and loving family, has a fabulous home and financial stability. But for many years, sadness is the only emotion she's been able to feel because she suffers from chronic depression.
Being depressed is very lonely. You just don't feel like anybody can understand what you're feeling. It's like a non-being. You know, just... your essence is just not there, you know.
Joanne knows her depression started in childhood, but everyone put it down to teenage moodiness. As she got older, her mood swings got worse, and she learned to smile through her despair, until eventually she completely broke down.
The worst it got was when after my sixth child was born. My defense mechanisms completely closed down. I would sleep most of the time. I began to stop eating. I began to lose weight. My kids would have to fix their own dinner. And I would think about suicide several times a day. Just felt like I was crying out from this place that I was in, and nobody could really understand, and nobody could reach out and help me.
A succession of drugs and electroconvulsive therapy failed to lift her depression. She is one of the 20% of patients with depression for whom none of the conventional treatments work. Because her condition was so severe, she has been one of the first patients to benefit from an unusual new approach to the treatment of depression. A nerve in her neck is connected to an electronic device implanted in her chest.
That little device right there.
You can feel it, can't you?
Yeah.
The surgery involves wrapping a coil of wire around the vagus nerve in the neck. The wire is then tunneled down to the chest and connected up to the stimulator. The stimulator is then implanted into a small pocket cut in the chest. The vagus nerve, one of the main cranial nerves, transmits electrical pulses deep into the brain, close to two areas known as the thalamus and hypothalamus, both strongly associated with mood. No one is absolutely sure what this increased electrical activity is doing to improve a patient's mood. But it's now known for sure that depression can be caused by chemical imbalances in the brain, possibly through tissue damage.
Tell me, how have you spent your time in the last week?
And at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, where Joanne is being treated, they think that the increased electrical activity has heightened her brain's sensitivity to the antidepressant drug she's taking.
Okay, come on. 1, 2, 3.
So Joanne still takes the antidepressants, but for the first time, thanks to the stimulator, they finally seem to be working. And she's even taking a lower dose.
It started working several weeks after the operation, and then the good moods that I was experiencing were becoming longer, and the downtimes were becoming shorter.
What does it feel like when the device actually goes off?
I'm aware of it, and it's going off right now. And when it goes off, my voice gets hoarse. You can hear that. I think you can hear that.
After 10 months of living with the implant, she's hardly aware of it now. The only reminder is the regular feelings of joy for the first time in years.
It's just a wonderful feeling. I get real pleasure out of my grandchildren and my children. The stimulator really works for me. And I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, it's great to see her happy. Joanne was part of a trial of 30 patients. All of them had failed to respond to any other treatments, but 12 of them responded to this, 40%. Here to discuss the results is Dr. Mark Porter. So, Mark, for some, this could be the light at the end of the tunnel.
I think some is the operative word. I'm glad to say that this is not going to become a conventional treatment for people with depression. The vast majority of patients that we see respond to conventional treatments like antidepressants, so we don't need to go for these sorts of treatments. But it's another weapon in our armoury. And that's one of the most exciting things about this discovery, because I hope it'll shed a little bit more light on depression itself. So it'll only be used for a minority of people, but maybe it will help us come to terms with what causes this common disease. 1 in 10 people get it.
But the thing about depression, it might be common, we don't always talk about it. How many people do you think will really benefit from something like this?
8 out of 10 people will respond to conventional treatment. 1 in 5 will need some other form of treatment like this, but this will only really apply to people who suffer from regular attacks. What I would say about depression is that people don't talk about it. We need to get people in to see the doctor earlier, and we doctors need to be picking it up sooner.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you want more information on dealing with depression, please call the BBC Action Line on 08000 839 839. That's 08000 839 839.
Still to come, the half-ton of metal that mimics a horse to test the safety of jumps.
And the palm-sized spy plane. We witnessed its record-breaking flight.
But first, our genetic research web survey.
Last week, we told you about genetically modified liver cells that could be used to cure diabetes in the future.
Through the Tomorrow's World website, we asked you to examine a number of different future uses of genetic research for medical treatment, and to say whether you felt that they were ethically acceptable or not.
The scenarios ranged from genetic screening to cloning human beings, and we've got some results. So far, we've had 4,000 votes. The first question deals with genetic modification of organs, for example, modifying the liver to produce insulin to cure diabetes, and 97% of people who voted are comfortable that science should offer this treatment. On genetic screening, 70% said yes, science should offer this treatment. On genetic modification of unborn humans, 81% voted yes. Next, genetic modification of adults and children, and 74% voted yes. So far, most people who voted are comfortable with genetic research, but here's where it gets really controversial. On cloning of human beings, just 16% say yes. A massive 84% say no, science would be going too far if we offered the treatment. And finally, gene selection, creating your own designer baby gene by gene, and 92% voted against that. So it seems there is a clear divide. Most people who voted in our poll are in favour of making small changes to our genetic makeup to treat diseases, but draw the line at science involving major alterations to our natural genetics.
Now, with events of the Grand National still fresh in the memory, minds are turning to improving safety for horses and riders. And in cross-country horse trials, scientists have been using an equine version of the humble crash test dummy to help design safer fences. In 1992, Ginny Elliott was riding on the cross-country stage of the badminton horse trials when disaster struck.
It rained an awful lot the night before the cross-country, and I was one of the first horses to go. It was a solid post and rail fence. He slipped. He hit it with the upper part of his front legs and he somersaulted.
He just slipped on takeoff and hit the top.
I was very lucky not to have been landed on. If the horse lands on you, you haven't got much chance.
Unlike show jumping, cross-country is an endurance event. Ridden over rugged terrain and a variety of challenging fences, its aim is to push both horse and rider to their limits. But the unique nature of the sport comes at a price.
I mean, I've jumped thousands and thousands of fences, so by the sheer law of averages, you know, you're going to have falls. Of course you're going to have falls. Unfortunately, I've smashed this arm to pieces. I've broken 2 ankles. I've broken my leg. I've broken wrists, and I've gone pretty much around the whole body, I think.
In the past 2 years, a total of 6 riders in the UK have been killed in cross-country events. The single biggest reason why it's that much more dangerous than show jumping is the design of the fences. This is a typical cross-country fence. You can see how solidly it's built. A hefty fixed bar here at the top, held on by these ropes to the uprights. Hit this and you could risk serious injury, horse and rider. Now contrast that with a typical show jumping fence. Here it is, higher than the cross-country one, with a bar that falls off. Immediately you hit it like that, so clearly less likely you risk serious injury. At the Transport Research Laboratory in Berkshire, engineers have set about designing the ultimate safety fence for cross-country. Clearly unable to test it out on real horses, they've instead turned to a distant relative of the crash test dummy. What the engineers have come up with is this, a crash test horse. It may not look much like a horse, but actually it behaves much more like a horse than meets the eye. So that the test horse would behave realistically, its designers studied fall after fall on video. In this particular case, both horse and rider were lucky to escape unhurt.
We found that if this was the rail and these are the horse's legs, if the contact is below the knee, the horse tends to scrabble over the jump. If the contact's between the knee and the shoulder, the contact pushes the legs rearward and causes the horse to cartwheel over the fence and then potentially crushes the rider against the ground.
And they've designed this test horse to behave in just the same way. It weighs the same as a horse, it has hinged legs like this, it has hydraulic dampers that allow it to react to an impact in just the same way as a horse's limbs do. The whole contraption is controlled by a pulley system that propels the test horse forward at a speed of 25 kilometers an hour, about the same speed as a real horse. Before testing it out on the new fence, we've asked former world champion Ginny Elliott to see the horse being launched at the old, unmodified fence, the type that caused her accident in 1992.
3, 2, 1.
Wow. Ginny. Now, if you'd been on that horse, what would have happened to you?
Well, you could see, Peter, that the whole horse did a somersault. It was very impressive because that is exactly what happens.
And if you'd been on that horse, you could have been in real trouble.
You could have been in real trouble, yeah.
Why not in cross-country have bars that fall off? Well, safer, surely.
These horses are trained from a very early age to jump solid fences. Once we start putting in fences that fall down as easily as a show jump, the horse will lose respect and I think potentially could be reckless.
So the challenge has been to design a fence that will not only look sturdy enough to keep a horse on its guard, but that will also behave in such a way as to withstand most knocks, yet collapse when a horse is in serious trouble. And this is the new fence. When the horse hits it with that incredible force, the downward pressure of the top part of the horse's leg hitting the bar here cracks open this shear pin here, and that then falls away, allowing the bar to fall down vertically and no longer act as a pivot over which the horse can cartwheel, endangering the rider's life. Let's see how it works. The test horse is positioned to strike the new safety fence at exactly the same place and speed as before.
3, 2, 1.
This time, as the test horse hits the fence with the upper part of its legs, the pole, crucially, gives way. And because it isn't acting as a pivot, the horse doesn't go into a cartwheel. And Ginny, unlike a show jumping bar, this one hasn't gone forward but gone straight down.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the design. That pole is not going to interfere with his legs. This is very, very safe, very secure.
Now, if you'd been on that horse, hitting the pole as we saw it then and moving on like we saw the horse move on, how safe would you have been?
I wouldn't have fallen. Looking at that, I would not have fallen. I would have stayed on board. The horse, yes, he would have scrabbling about, but basically, you would not have fallen.
They'll be using the crash test horse on a range of different fences before they settle on the perfect design.
Now, the latest in surveillance technology. A couple of years ago, we chased Craig Doyle through the deserts of California with this miniature spy plane with its own live onboard camera. Well, they've now shrunk the plane down to just 15 centimetres, and the quality of the live pictures is even more impressive. But not content with that, they've set themselves a virtually impossible mission: to create a spy plane that can fly into confined spaces. Katie Natman goes to Southern California to find out just how close they are.
To be the size of a fly and able to go anywhere and everywhere unnoticed is every spy's dream. Camera technology is small enough now to do that, but it's getting those cameras into and around buildings and confined spaces that's the challenge. Flying them in is one solution, and it's the complex flight of insects that's pointing the way.
The wings of insects give them incredible control, allowing them to fly forwards, backwards, sideways and hover with ease. It's something engineers would love to mimic, but Mother Nature is hard to copy.
But in this wind tunnel at the University of California, Los Angeles, some of the mysteries of flapping flight are being unraveled as a team of engineers are moving closer to building their own insect wing.
Engineers have been building airplanes and fixed-wing models for a century or so, but in terms of flapping flight, and especially in terms of these small micro-air vehicles, we're really at the same stage as the Wright brothers were in 1903.
Steve and Nick are watching for clues from the way these real insect wings gain lift from the air, and then trying to design their own synthetic wings to do the same job. They've had a much tougher task than the Wright brothers.
On a fixed wing, the air is very nice and steady, and it stays to the surface. But on here, the air is very turbulent. There are all sorts of eddies and whirls that form on the wing and flow off.
When a flapping wing beats down, a bubble of low-pressure air develops above the wing, and the higher pressure below pushes it up. Steve and Nick had to come up with a light wing that would create the same kind of lift.
Well, first of all, the insect wing, as we can see, it has to be very light and very strong, and also have this three-dimensional structure. So we tried to mimic something like that by building the wings of the titanium alloy. The problem is it's pretty heavy and it's not flexible enough. So we decided to change our design to something very simple.
What we've come up with is actually this type of wing, which looks nothing like an insect wing.
They're hoping these new wings will form the basis for the next generation of micro spy planes. They seem to fly as well as a real insect in the wind tunnel, but how will they perform in the air? Joel Grassmeyer is going to put them to the test. He specializes in building ornithopters, aircraft that fly by flapping.
People have been building rubber band-powered ornithopters like this one since the early 1900s, and I'll just show you how it flies.
Wow, look at that. Ah, here we go. Shall I catch it? Joel's challenge has been to turn these ultralight rubber band ornithopters into something that's capable of carrying an electric motor and perhaps one day a spy camera.
We want to be able to stay up longer and control where it goes, so we need to add electric power to get more endurance out of it.
Using Steve and Nick's wings, Joel and his colleagues have come up with the world's first electric micro-ornithopter. Flapping takes a lot of energy, and the tiny carbon fiber robot only has the battery power to flutter its wings for about a minute. But Joel Grassmeyer will be happy if it manages to fly for just a fraction of that. Now, Joel and his team currently hold the world record for electrically powered micro-ornithopter free flight. That stands at 18 seconds. Today, we're going to see if we can beat that with this latest model.
Okay, let's go break the record.
The new wings are giving the lift, but the ornithopter is banking to the right, and after only 6 seconds, it's on the floor. Half an hour later, and the sharp banking's not getting any better. And then, with time running out before the morning wind gets up, she takes to the air. The wind tunnel tests have paid off.
Hang in there.
And with Joel willing her to stay aloft, the new wings flap their way into the record books. Better battery technology and mechanics to mimic the complex motion of insect wings will carry future electric ornithopters further.
The team have been making incredibly rapid progress, and using a radio-controlled version, they've already shattered that record and managed a flight of 42 seconds.
That's it for this time. Mean Streets is next on BBC One.
We'll be back in a week's time with an Underwater Tomorrow's World special. Until then,
goodbye.
Goodbye.
Next week, Tomorrow's World's at the later time of 7:30, with the scuba kit that fits in a rucksack,
a sonar direction finder that should mean divers never get lost,
and stand aside, James Bond. Katie Knappman rides the underwater bike.
And just a reminder about that robotic web chat. Professor Noel Sharkey is online now at bbc.co.uk/livechat.
How much do other